Welcome back to episode 2 of this Olivetti M24. In the previous episode I cleaned it and we had a peek inside it and saw some of the features this computer has, but I want to extend it. And before we extend it, I wanted to upgrade the BIOS. Inside this one there's the BIOS 1.36 version. I wanted to put in the 1.43 into it, but while Googling, I came across that there actually exists a 1.44 version of this BIOS. And I want to put that in and see if it actually works. That 1.44 is from 87. The 1.43 that I wanted to put in is from 86. So it's a newer version, and it seems to be the only, the latest version of that BIOS. There's no documentation whatsoever about this BIOS. I can't find it in any of the original Olivetti documentation, so it's gonna be curious how the computer will behave. In order for us to do that, we need to have a few tools ready. So I have the chip remover, so I can pull out the two BIOS. There's a high and a low one. I have some spare EEPROMs that I will use for that purpose. I have the tool that will burn the BIOS onto, and in the case it doesn't work, I can also clean the BIOS via this cleaner. And I have my laptop on the side, because we will have to move over to the laptop once we are burning it, because this one goes via the USB and the program can then download that version onto an EEPROM. Besides that, I also wanted to upgrade it with the graphics extended board. That board you also saw on the Olivetti M28. It's the same board. This is just a tiny bit older. I think it's like a year, one and a half year older than the other one, but it's the same thing, completely the same thing. It will make it possible to have 640 by 400 in 16 color when you put this one in. As this one doesn't have a hard drive in, I also want to put in the XT-IDE into it and load some programs from that. Last but not least, with this computer I got the manual. Let me turn it around so you can see it. It's the installation and operation guide. Within this manual, I discovered a few disks that I've never seen before. It's the custom test program that you can use in order to test all the hardware within the Olivetti. So we'll have a peek at that. There's also other disks that actually goes through the Olivetti explaining what it can do. So we'll have a look at that also. So let me move the camera over, peek into the computer and remove the BIOS. So let's start by looking at the EEPROMs. So the EEPROMs that I have found that we can use is a 27C64. And before we start, I just want to put them in the card reader, the EEPROM reader over here, and then I want to use the program to verify that they're actually clean. On the unit, there's a place where you can see how you need to put in the EEPROMs in it. So this thing is the thing that you need to find, and it's this way then, because they're down here. So if I take these, put in the unit, close it, and I then, I need my glasses, if I then locate up here and I try to find that specific model, so that was 27 C64, and these that we are talking about, they are from Texas Instruments, so it's a TI, and they are 28 pins, so it's just the top one. So now that I have selected the actual EEPROM, we can now ask the program here to read from it. So if I say read up there and say read and go back, and then everything should be FF, meaning that they are now clear. So if we scroll, there's absolutely nothing in it. So let me put this one out, place the other one into it, verifying that the tip is correct. It is. Let's go back on devices, press on read, press read, go back, and they are all, this one is also empty. So we can now find the images to read into the EEPROM. I have previously downloaded them from the internet. So if I go on load file, point to the location, which I have here on my computer, we can do the high one first, or the odd one, and after that we'll burn the low and even one. So let's do the high one first. This one is now loaded into the program, and for those who can read stuff like this, there we go. So let me just go on device and do program. That will then start programming the EEPROM. So let's do that. Pressing program. It's doing a thing, verifying, and it's done. Going back, taking this one out. This is the high one. I'll move it over here just for a second, and then I'll do the same with the other one. Go on device, go on file, open file, browse, select the low one, press OK, and then go on device and program. And program. Once that is done, you should actually try to verify just to be sure that it's down there. So the EEPROM content, not this one, but the content that we downloaded is still here. So we can now ask, is this one the same as within the chip? So if we go back on device and do verify, and verify down there, it will then confirm that it is the same. So we now have two EEPROMs, a high one and a low one. And I made these. And this one, so this is the high, this is the low. So we'll put that up here because you should cover this up so they don't get cleaned out again. So let me now move the computer forward, open the casing up, pull out the EEPROMs, and put in these two new ones. So I'll put the label on the EEPROMs so I know which one is the low and which one is the high one. And I'm ready with my tool. And this is the location that we need to focus on. So let me take these two out and put in those two. And again, obviously we need to be careful where we are putting them in, to put them in the right way. It's marked on the board. How was that operation? This one is then the, let me get it in focus, there we go, 1.36, and in here we now have the 1.44. Let's get the lid back on. We don't need to do anything dip-wise settings or anything, because it's just the BIOS software that's being changed, so it's all good. So let's hook it up. So it's hooked up everything now again, and let me just start by excusing, it's raining here, so you may hear some rain, but that's fine. Let me turn the computer on and let's zoom in and see if the BIOS is actually showing up. It seems that it's right. It's revision 1.44. So that's good. And down here, the red light on the floppy disk, this is A, this is B. It's just waiting for us to put in a DOS disk. And that's what it's also saying here. It's just waiting. So let's try and do that. See if we can start it up. This is the DOS manual. And in the DOS manual, we have some DOS disk. This is a, I think it's 3.1 or 3, I'm not sure, let's see. So you just close the lid. And there we go. This is the Microsoft MS-DOS version 3.2, branded with Olivetti. So we have a running computer with the new BIOS, the 1.44. That's nice. Sadly, we don't have any description about what actually is featured within this newest version of the BIOS from 1987. This BIOS actually came around when a guy on a forum saw a picture of an Olivetti M21, and that's the same as the M24. It's just the portal version with built-in screen, obviously. I'll show you a link, a picture of it. And on that picture, he saw that the ROM BIOS was the 1.44, and then came a hunt to figure out who bought this computer and to see if we could download the BIOS version. And I found it, I downloaded it. And I will obviously also put it in the description downstairs so you can pick up this BIOS version. So that's the BIOS. The next task we have is about the graphics card. This is then the GO329er. This extends the built-in graphics card so that it can handle 640 by 400 in whopping 16 colors. Quite amazing. Not many applications actually supported the Olivetti specific CGA graphics mode 640 by 400, and especially in 16 colors. But for instance, Lotus 123 was supporting it, and a lot of CAD programs, AutoCAD and so on and so forth, did actually support it. You could also install the Windows version on the computer, and that also supported this board. So let's turn off the computer. Let's take the lid off. Let's put this in, and we need to look at some dip switches or some switches on the onboard computer graphics card in order for that to work together with this one. If you watch my episode on the Olivetti M28, you will see that I also put in a similar card into that, and I explain all the switches. So we'll do that again, but hold on and let's put it in. The lid is off and we're ready to put in the graphics cards. As a feature from Olivetti, and thank you Olivetti, they actually provided us with a spare dip switch here, which we need. But before we get into that, I just want to move the camera around and show you the onboard graphics card and show you where we need to make some changes. And the changes, let me turn it a little bit around. Let me see if I can move in the camera. Probably I should do it handheld, right? Sorry for this. There we go. So right in there, on the graphics card. If you saw the video on the M28, you saw that I went through all of this. So we have switch here, which is marked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Sorry, there we go. So what we need to do, so there's the settings 2 and 3 and 5 and 6. That means you only work with this graphics card in it. It's just that graphics card. If you want to put in the extended graphics card, you need to combine 4, 5, and 6. So the 3 rows in the bottom. And this is why Olivetti provided us with this specific one. So if I remove this one in the bottom, dang, there we go, sorry, there we go. And I move us over here to this area. So this piece, yes, it looks a bit weird, but it's just 2 of these combined together. So if I remove this one, this actually combines pin 3 and pin 2 over here. So if I take this one, put it up here, this card is as it should be, and I then move this one over here, we should be able to plug it in. This now has combined 4, 5, and 6, so the 3 ones on the bottom. So all we need to do is to put in the graphics card like this. There we are. It's a little bit crazy doing this with the handhelds. I need the second camera. Well, eventually I'll get it. So there we go, it's in. We just need to connect this ribbon to that graphics card. That's all done. And what we can do now is that we can take the cable that usually, let me just wrap it out, that usually goes in there, and now we can put it into the new graphics card, or the extended graphics card. So let me do this and turn on the computer, and then we can see that it's actually just working on the screen. Sadly, I don't have any programs that actually can test the high resolution graphics card, but at least we can see if it works. So let's cross our fingers. So I hooked up the monitor and the keyboard. So let's turn it on and hopefully we see something here. I'm not sure if it works. Let's just try and see. It should work. So probably the monitor just needs to warm up a little bit. I see something coming up. We still have the revision 1.44 of the BIOS, and because and due to we are seeing anything, this extended graphics card is now working. I haven't put in a boot disk, so over here you can see the red light. Sorry, I should point this way. There we can see the red light. It's trying to wait for us to put in a boot disk. So we have now put in the extended, we have now put in the extended graphics card, and it seems to be working. So what's left in this episode, which is not about the inner of the computer, but more about what you can do externally to it. I have this installation and operations guide, and with that one came a few discs, and I actually wanted to try to see if they're working. So they came with the Getting to Know M24 Part 1 and Part 2. It also came with customer tests, and we know the customer test by now. That's the one that you use to set the BIOS in the SP, so the M24 SP, and in the M28 and 280 and 380 and so on and so forth. That's where you use this one. So does this provide us with any means to make changes to BIOS on an Olivetti M24? We will see. Let me put it in. And as soon as I close it, it will boot up. It boots in DOS 2.11. And it now writes customer test program version 3.3. To exit customer test program during testing, just press Control break keys. Do you wish to run the test in automatic mode? Yes or no? So no is 0 and yes is 1. I have actually tried to run it. It takes like 45 minutes or so, half an hour, to run the test of everything in the computer. So we're not gonna do that. But I just want to say that we will be saying no to run it automatic, because then we can select some of the things, which gives us this menu saying execute test once, or you can format a scratch disk, or you can exit this direct program. So let's try to make one test. So that's 0. And now it actually goes through its hardware. It looks at all the hardware configuration that it sees. And there we are. So what it sees is that obviously it has a main board. It sees the 640 megabyte that we can run test on. We can run some test on the keyboard. We can run a test on the color video system. We can run test on parallel ports, serial ports, and the floppy disk drives. Let's start by just doing the 640 kilobytes of memory. That's point number 3. Sorry, it asks if the list is correct first, and then I have to say yes with 1. And now I can press 3 to say I want to run the 640 kilobyte memory test. Do you want to pause on error? No, we just want to continue. So I say no, which is 0. Test 300, 640 kilobyte memory. Memory test duration up to 4 minutes. Addressing test. So this is gonna be in super high speed mode. And we're done. So test completed. Number of test loops, it just did it once with no errors, 0. So press enter to continue. It just summarizes all the tests. And then then it asks us, do you want to do a complete test again in automatic mode? I'm gonna say no, so we can make another one. So I'll say execute test once. And then it actually says, scratch disk must be, oh, sorry. I made a boo-boo. I pressed 1. That's format scratch disk. I should have pressed 0. So let me get out of this. Let me just reboot the computer. Hold on for a second. And we're back. This time I'm selecting 0. So let's just try the color video system, number 5. Do we want to pause on arrows? Let's say no. Test 500 color video system. There we go, all passed with 0 errors. Sadly, this customer test program doesn't test the extended graphics card that we put in, sadly. So it's time to have a look at the installation and operations guide manual, so we can have a peek at the two last discs that I actually wanted to show you. These are the Getting to Know M24. It consists of two discs, and if I move them a little bit aside and open up the manual, there's a special chapter called Getting Started on Your Olivetti Personal Computer. That's also called OPC. And there's running the tutorial, which are these discs. And it talks about that if your system is a dual disk version, you can run the tutorial called Getting to Know M24. And this one is the one with the two discs. So we should be able to start the computer up with the part 1 in drive A and part 2 in drive B. So let's do that. Let me turn on the computer, put in the two discs in the two drives. This is disk number 1, or part number 1. This is going to be part number 2. And then I'll turn it on. Just let me state to you immediately that the screen will flicker, because I am still just using my iPhone to record all my YouTube videos at the moment, because I haven't gone out and spent £1,000 or more on a camera that can adjust to the frequency of the actual computer. So we will have some difficulties in seeing what's going on the screen. My goal is eventually, when I have the camera, I will video the whole session on these two discs, going through them. But at the moment, we will just have to settle with a little bit of the intro. And as you can see, Olivetti Personal Computer pops up on the screen. And here we finally have the menu. So you can now either do the continuous demonstration by pressing Shift F7, and it will run through everything about the computer, explaining everything about it. Or you can run individual chapters. So for instance, F1 is the microprocessor, F2 is talking about the memory, F3 is the inside of the M24, F4 is the expansion, F5 is the screen, and so on and so forth. I will not go through all of them, because as I said, once I have a camera where I can adjust to the frequency of the screen, I will let it run continuous demonstration, and it will run for an hour showing everything, and I'll make a separate YouTube video on that eventually. So the only thing I just want to briefly show you, and remember it's still flickering, I'll just point to one. So let's just do the screen, which is F5, and we'll do a quick tour of that. that was a quick tour, right? Let me take out the discs, put them a little bit away, because the last and the final task that I just want to make or do with this computer is that I would like to install the XT-IDE with the Compact Flash into this, and I will put in a compact flash drive or disk or module or whatever we call it, and then we'll install DOS on this one, so this will make this into a hard disk in the computer. So let me adjust the camera, take off the lid of the computer, and we'll insert this one, and then we'll have to find our DOS drives, which I have here, and the DOS drive I will then boot up, and I will format first F disk the card, and then format, and then install, copying all the information from the floppy drives or floppy disks onto this, and then it should just boot on this. Let me adjust the camera. So the card is now in, and I will now boot on the disk drive in order to boot on DOS. The reason why I put both disk 1 and disk 2 of DOS in is because on disk 1, that's the bootable media, and on disk 2, that's where we have the program fdisk. So the first thing I will go on, that's the B drive. And then I'll run fdisk, because we need to partition the compact flash card. So I'll create a DOS partition on that one, saying I just want the full. So that's just gonna be yes. And I will just also say that this is the active one. So that's number 1, so it will now make this partition the active one. I can then go out, and then I can make it boot again on the floppy disk. Once it's booted on the floppy disk, I can then format the compact flash card. So let's try to do that. Although it now has formatted the compact flash card and transferred the DOS command to that drive, it says the format is failed, but it's not true. I haven't figured out why it comes up with this error. So for testing, let's take out the floppy disks. Let's boot the computer, and let's boot it up on the compact card. And there we go. It boots up as it should. So what I will do now, I will now copy both the medias from floppy disk A and B onto a directory on this new hard disk. So on the C drive, I'll make a DOS directory, go into the DOS directory, and now I'll copy everything from A and then I'll copy everything from B. And that's that. So if I do dir, I'm now in the DOS directory, and I now have all the files. So I can now take out the 2 DOS disks, And what's left is for us to configure the auto-exit bat file on the compact flash card so that it will ask for the date, ask for the time, and it will just ensure that everything is set up correctly. So we need it to point both to the C drive, to the root of the C drive, and to the directory within the C drive, the DOS directory. So let's do that. In order for us to do that, we need to use the good old edit program. And bear with me, it's 35 years at least, if not longer, since I used that the last time. So let's do edit and create the file in the root of the directory, in the root of the C drive. And this editor now asks, because it cannot see it, if it's okay to create, and I'll press yes or Y. In order to use the editor, and I hope I'm right, I recall F5 on the keyboard. So that's up here. F5 means save, and Shift F1 means quit. I can't remember, but I think that's it. So let me just punch in some lines for the auto-exit bat. That should be it. So I'll press F5 on the keyboard. It is writing 7 lines, so we're good. And then Shift F1 should go out of it, and that's correct. So let's reboot the computer. Control Alt Delete. It asks for the date. So I'll just punch in something like March 1st, 2021. That's a little bit too much. There we go. I know this computer doesn't support 2000. So it will not give you the correct date anyway, but let's just punch it in. And time is like, I think it's like 1 o'clock, that's 1300 over here in Europe. And that's it. We have a computer with a compact flash card, now formatted with DOS 3.2, labeled Olivetti personal computer. And that actually wraps it up. So let me turn the camera around and let's see what we have done. This computer, the Olivetti M24, this is very dear to me, as this is the first PC I had. So I'm specially attached to this one. And it's nice, have it clean, ensured that we have updated with the newest BIOS. Sadly, it's undocumented, so it's now the BIOS 1.44. I haven't figured out what has changed. The rumors are that maybe it just supports a few more hard drives, but I can't see any difference between the 1.43 and the 1.44 that we have in here, but we now have it. That's fine. We also looked at the discs that came with the installation and operation guide. We the that they're not for that much use, but the customer disk told us how the BIOS were. It could test a lot of stuff like the memory and if you had a coprocessor, graphics and other stuff. And then we very briefly went through getting to know the Olivetti M24. As I said, I would like to make a new complete video just showing that demonstration of the M24 eventually. But I need to go out and buy an expensive camera so that I can sync it to the frequency of the monitor before I can do that. Heads up, I know that people want me to put the discs online so other people also can benefit on the software. So what I will do eventually, I will zip it up and put it on my archive, and I will link to my archive in the description. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of the Olivetti M24, and give me a thumbs up if you liked it, or that one, and please do remember to subscribe. This way you get notified when I produce new content for all of you. Thank you again. My name is Tybo, and goodbye.